We have a very special guest with us today. It is the co-founder of Meesho, Vidit Aatrey, who's going to be talking to ET now when there's so much that's happening. The run-up to union budget on 1st of February, the tech sell-off that we are seeing globally. So Vidit, a really timely interview. We really appreciate you taking the time out. Since you and Sanjeev, of course, started Meesho back in 2015, the kind of growth that you've seen has been unbelievable, if I could put it very, very modestly, but is based on the backbone of the Indian economy, the SMEs, the micro sellers, the MSMEs. You're going remote into, small cities across the country. So I thought you'd be one of the best people to get on the channel to get a sense of what's really going on. We're hearing about a slowdown in the smaller sectors, in the rural economy. Hindustan Unilever is talking about it. What's your experience?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Nayantara, for having us again. Great to speaking to you and talking about Meesho and everything else. Yeah, I think you're right. Like our vision at Meesho is to enable 100 million small businesses to succeed online, right? And everything and anything that we do on a daily basis is how can we do more and more for the small businesses that are there on the platform already and who are not there, right? So I think I will concur. If you look at the overall economy, obviously pandemic has affected a lot of them. And since very few percentage of small businesses were digitized before the pandemic and they were dependent only on the offline channels, they have been affected in a big way over the last 2 years. I think all of this was expected. Some of these indicators are always lagging, but I don't think anyone would be surprised. But what we are seeing, by the way, on our platform, especially over the last 1.5 years, we have seen the most successful small businesses have been the ones who have made this transition from only offline to now being available online as well. And they've invested in their capabilities to go online. And they've been able to not just maintain or sustain their business, they've been able to even grow their business over time because now they can access like pan-India distribution. They can serve anyone and everyone, whereas before the pandemic, it was only local, right? So that's what we are seeing. I believe the best way to answer this question is what can we do for these small businesses so they can again thrive again, that the overall India economy, which is 85% dependent on small businesses, can start to grow again. I think we have to do a lot more in helping and enabling all kinds of small businesses to really come online very easily. And this is something that we have talked about even earlier. So if you look at the policy today, if you are not registered with GST, you're not allowed to go online and sell your products. And if you look at small businesses, like about 10% or even less than 10% of all small businesses have GST registration. So practically 90% of small businesses in India are not allowed to sell online at a time where people are not going out and buying products offline, right? So I would say that is a very, very big limiting factor. We see this on our platform, like a very small percentage of small businesses who come up and register and say, I want to sell on your platform are able to do so because they don't have GST registration. Now, the question that you will have is, why don't they also get GST registration? Like, why is it such a big thing? If you get a GST registration, you need to file returns every month, which means you need to get help of a CA. And how many of these small businesses in India can really afford all of these things, right? Very, very few. And we have seen this to be a big problem. In the offline world, if you don't have GST, you're allowed to sell because of the same problems. But in the online world, it's still not. So I would say, I think we've heard some really positive news from some quarters that the government may consider solving for this very soon. But I really feel that this is one of the biggest blockers that is stopping small businesses to really go online and become successful.
No, that's absolutely shocking that at a time when, after the pandemic, when we're talking about digital India and, going away from a cash economy, talking about the backbone of the economy, that so many of them can't sell online. And with it, on their behalf, on behalf of the micro sellers, the SMEs who are now on platforms like Meesho, whether it's social commerce or not, what else can the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman do? Would you have any tall expectations from budget? And I'm asking you first on their behalf, not about the startup ecosystem.
Yeah. So if I look at small businesses, right, like what do they want? They want policy that can really remove all the obstacles that they have in their businesses right now. One big thing that I talked about is they can't go online and sell it all, right? And by the way, this is not just for the existing small businesses. I'm including all the small businesses that no one captures in their numbers because they're not visible. Let me take an example of women entrepreneurs who are on our platform, right? Most of them are homemakers, are not classified as like formal businesses anywhere. But if you're a lady who's knitting sweaters at home during this very hard time, really want to sell those sweaters online and make some money for your household, you're not allowed to do so for the same problem, right? So it's not just for the existing small businesses that people can recognize in that 60, 70 million number that all of us talk about, but a lot of these micro entrepreneurs that are there across the country that are not in any numbers, who are also not allowed to sell. So I would say this is like one very, very big problem. What else does a small business need? Small business then needs access to capital. Hey, everything else is fine. Now I need to invest in my business to grow. I would say there also that certain steps can be taken which can really help solve for access to capital for these small businesses. If something can happen in that direction, I would say that would be a boost as well. But yeah, I think I won't give you like 10 reasons. I would say these are the few things that if they are solved really well, that can unlock the small business economy in a very, very big way.
Now, if you look at it since the pandemic, Vidit, the exuberance, the excitement in the economy has been thanks to the new economy, the startups, the unicorns, and the gig economy. Coming to that, what is it that the union budget can do? I know all of you are flush with cash, but there are, of course, many who don't get access to capital or a meeting with a venture capitalist. So as a leading member of this ecosystem, what would your suggestions be to the finance minister?
Yeah, I think if you just talk about the startup ecosystem, I would say there are lots of possibilities, right? So if I first look at just solving for talent, so a lot of money coming into this ecosystem, but obviously the talent hasn't grown by the same amount. So if you ask any entrepreneur today in the tech ecosystem, they'll talk about that, hey, access to talent is tough, and it's getting tougher every day. And there are a lot of things that can be done to make startup a better and like more preferred, I would say, place to be for talent. Like, for example, today, there are certain policies that prohibit the attractiveness of ESOPs. Like, for example, the amount of tax that is put in, you have to, for example, so ESOPs are basically stock options. They're not stocks, right? So you have to essentially exercise them first and then pay taxes. Most of these people pay much higher taxes than some of the publicly listed companies. So there's a differential that is there in between. If that parity can be solved, I feel that would make attracting talent for all entrepreneurs and all tech companies much easier. I would say that is one. Second, I think a lot of things are already happening, right? So I won't say there are a lot of other things that we need to do. I think over the last 2 years, what we really like is the government has been acknowledging the contribution of the tech ecosystem into its overall growth. Recently, our Prime Minister also talked about the National Startup Day, right? So that is also driving the right conversations. You go to the very remote parts of the country, people don't feel that startups are like risky. They think that these are things that we need to do. India has always been an entrepreneurial nation, but directing that energy now toward the tech ecosystem is happening because startups are getting more and more mainstream. Right? So I would say a lot of positive things are happening, have happened over the last 2 years because everyone acknowledges that this is the right thing to do for India's future. I feel like still a few of these things can happen where some of these policies are dated and can be more, I would say, they can be modernized to make parity between what existed in the existing traditional sector and what now happens in the tech ecosystem.
You talked about talent, which is, of course, the number one problem that not only Vidit Aatrey of Meesho or other unicorns like him in India are facing. You even have someone like Elon Musk taking to Twitter, right, talking about the shortage of engineers around the world. So, outside of creating more talent, What about ESOPs, which is, of course, the currency of the startup street? That's how you lure talent, right? When you're a startup saying, hey, if we do well, you're going to get so much richer. On that front?
Yeah, so I will repeat the same point, which is around ESOPs, right? So you are exactly right. Why do people who are coming out of colleges today or are with traditional conventional companies going to come to startups? Because they want to really see a lot more growth than they would see in their existing opportunities, which they today consider as less risky, right? So they would come to the tech ecosystem not because of cash. A lot of these companies can give them cash maybe more than us, but they come because that if this company grows really fast, we will be able to share into that growth. And that essentially happens through ESOPs, right? The employee stock options. So I think they can be made more attractive. That can definitely happen. And that can happen by bringing more parity into the taxation of ESOPs for like private companies as well as public companies. I would say if that happens, it becomes much easier. And I would definitely recommend that if that is something that the government considers, I think that would really help tech ecosystem grow for the same reason.
With that, Vidit, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out for us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Nayantara. As again, really enjoyed this conversation.